In a quiet, sun-baked village of Udike, nestled deep in the heartlands, everyone knew the story of the two orphan sisters. Their parents had been taken by a swift illness many years ago, leaving them with nothing but a small, cracked mud house and a farm that yielded more dust than crops. The elder sister was named Amara. She was a vision, tall and graceful, with features so striking that people in the village would often pause their daily chores just to admire her. This constant attention had planted a seed of restlessness in her heart. Amara believed with every fiber of her being that such beauty was a currency, one that should buy a life of comfort and ease, not one of endless struggle. Her younger sister Zara was her opposite in many ways. She didn't possess Amara's loud, flashy beauty, but she had a quiet strength and a heart as pure as the morning dew. Zara was the backbone of their small family. From the first light of dawn until the stars blanketed the sky, she worked tirelessly. She fetched water from the distant stream, her shoulders aching under the weight of the clay pot. She cooked their meager meals over a smoky fire and tended the struggling farm, coaxing life from the stubborn soil. Zara held a simple, unwavering faith. She believed that kindness and hard work were seeds that would one day blossom into a better life. But that day felt impossibly far. Life was a relentless cycle of hardship. Every evening, as the sun bled orange and purple across the horizon, Amara would sit on the worn step outside their house. Her eyes would be fixed on the dusty road that snaked its way toward the distant city, a place she had only ever imagined. In her mind's eye, she saw gleaming cars, buildings that scraped the sky, and women adorned in shimmering silk and sparkling jewels. A bitter fire of jealousy would burn in her chest. "Why am I suffering here?" she would often complain, her voice laced with frustration. "I was not born to live like a beggar, to waste away in this forgotten place." Zara would quietly join her, her presence a comforting shadow in the twilight. "Be patient, sister," she would say softly, her voice a gentle balm. "God sees our struggles. Our time will come." But Zara's words of hope only fueled Amara's anger. "Patience will not buy me gold," Amara would reply sharply, her beautiful face twisted with scorn. "Look at me. I am withering away, wasting my beauty in this village of dirt and sorrow." Zara learned to fall silent during these moments. She knew that arguing with her sister was like trying to reason with a storm. Silence was safer. As the days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, Amara's resentment deepened. It was as if the very essence of the village had become an irritant to her. She began to hate the rhythmic sound of the village drums that once brought her comfort, the earthy smell of firewood that had always meant a warm meal, and even the weathered faces of the poor, hard-working people who were her neighbors. Her world had shrunk, and all that remained was a burning desire to escape it. Occasionally, wealthy visitors from the city would pass through Udike, their fancy clothes and confident air a stark contrast to the humble village life. Amara would watch them with an almost predatory focus, studying the way they spoke, the way they carried themselves, the way the villagers looked at them with a mixture of awe and respect. Each time one of these caravans departed, leaving a cloud of dust in its wake, her heart would sink deeper into the abyss of dissatisfaction. She felt trapped, a rare gem buried under a mountain of worthless rock. One night, the moon was a sharp sliver in the inky sky, and Amara's bitterness overflowed. "If I ever get a chance to leave this place," she said, her voice trembling with a chilling resolve, "I will never, ever return." Zara, who was mending a torn cloth by the faint light of a lamp, looked up, her gentle eyes filled with concern. "Even if it means leaving me behind?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Amara turned her head away, staring into the darkness. Her silence was a more deafening answer than any word could have been. A few days later, a ripple of excitement and fear spread through the village. A rich stranger had arrived and set up camp just beyond the market. Whispers followed him like his shadow. Some said he was a powerful businessman from the city, a kingmaker who could turn paupers into princes overnight. Others spoke in hushed tones, suggesting his immense wealth was tainted by something dark and unnatural. The village elders, their faces etched with worry, issued a stern warning for everyone to keep their distance. They sensed a danger that the younger, more hopeful villagers could not see. But for Amara, this stranger was not a danger. He was an opportunity. The warnings of the elders were just the fearful ramblings of old men who had accepted their lot in life. She refused to do the same. Early the next morning, before the sun had fully risen, she dressed in her best clothes. She carefully braided her long, dark hair and set off for the market. She found the stranger sitting alone, observing the morning bustle with an air of detached amusement, too. He noticed her instantly, his eyes sweeping over her from head to toe. "You are very beautiful," he said, his voice smooth as polished stone. He smiled, but the smile never reached his cold, calculating eyes. Beauty like yours should not suffer in a place like this. Amara's heart began to pound against her ribs. This was it. This was the moment she had been waiting for. "I can change your life," the man continued, his words like a hypnotic melody. "I can give you luxury, money, a grand house in the city with servants to wait on your every need." Amara's hands trembled. This was everything she had ever dreamed of, everything she believed she deserved. But then, the man's voice dropped, becoming low and serious, cutting through her daydream. "But everything has a price," he said slowly, his gaze intense. "And for what I offer, I require something truly precious from you in return." Amara swallowed, her throat suddenly dry. "What?" she managed to ask. The man leaned closer, his breath cool against her ear, and whispered words that made her blood run cold. That night, sleep was a distant stranger to Amara. She paced back and forth in the confines of their small mud house, a caged animal desperate for freedom. Her mind was a raging battlefield. On one side stood the image of Zara, her innocent, trusting sister, who loved her unconditionally. On the other side glittered a mountain of gold, a life of unimaginable luxury, everything Amara had ever craved. The two visions warred within her, tearing her apart. Zara, awakened by her sister's restless movements, sat up. "Sister, what is it? What is troubling you so deeply?" she asked, her voice thick with sleep and concern. Amara stopped pacing and forced a smile, a brittle mask that didn't quite hide the turmoil in her eyes. "It's nothing," she lied. I just met someone today who can help us. He can change our lives for the better." A look of pure, unadulterated relief washed over Zara's face. "Oh, Amara, that is wonderful news. I knew our prayers would be answered." She smiled, her faith in her sister absolute. Amara looked at that trusting face, the face that had always looked at her with love and admiration, and for a fleeting moment, a sharp pang of guilt pierced her heart. But the voice of greed was louder, more seductive. It drowned out the whispers of her conscience. She remembered the stranger's chilling words, and then she remembered the imagined feel of silk against her skin, the weight of gold in her hands. And slowly, deliberately, her heart began to harden. The warmth of her love for Zara grew cold, replaced by the icy resolve of ambition. That night, a decision was made. As the moon hung silent and watchful in the sky, the invisible threads of fate shifted, weaving a new and terrible pattern. Zara slept peacefully in her small bed, dreaming of a brighter future, completely unaware that the sister she loved was plotting to trade her life for a fantasy. Amara sat beside her, her eyes wide open, staring into the darkness. Her heart was racing, not with fear, but with a thrilling, terrifying anticipation. Luxury was calling her name, and Amara was ready to answer, no matter what the cost. The morning sun crept softly into the village of Umudike, but it brought no warmth to Amara's heavy heart. She hadn't slept a wink. The stranger's offer, his tempting words, echoed in her mind like distant drums of war. Her sister Zara woke with the birds, as she always did. She swept the compound, her movements a familiar, comforting rhythm. She fetched water from the well and then started on their simple breakfast. She found Amara sitting outside, lost in thought, staring at nothing. "Sister, you look so tired," Zara said gently, her voice full of concern. "Are you not well?" Amara forced a smile, a mask to hide the turmoil within. "No, I'm fine. I was just thinking about our future." Zara's face lit up instantly. "Our future," she repeated, her voice bubbling with excitement. Amara nodded slowly, the lie feeling heavy on her tongue. "Yes, I think I've found a way for us to escape this poverty. To finally have a better life." Zara clapped her hands, pure joy radiating from her. "I knew it. I knew God would hear our prayers." Those words were like a knife in Amara's heart, but she buried the pain deep down. The choice had been made. Her path was set. Stay. Later that day, Amara led Zara to the riverbank, a quiet spot far from the prying eyes and curious ears of the village. There is a rich man in the city, Amara began, choosing her words with great care. He's looking for good workers, and he pays very, very well. Zara's eyes widened with wonder. A job in the city. She whispered, the idea almost too grand to imagine. Jets, Amara confirmed, building the fantasy piece by piece. You'll live in a big, beautiful house. You'll eat the best food every day. And after you're settled, I'll come and join you. A mix of fear and excitement washed over Zara. But I've never even left you, Mudyke, she said softly, her voice barely a whisper. Amara took her sister's hands, her grip tight and reassuring. Trust me, Zara, I would never ever let any harm come to you. Zara looked into her sister's eyes and nodded. She had always trusted Amara completely and without question. That evening, as the sun began to bleed across the sky, the stranger returned. His car, parked at the edge of the village, shone like a black metal beast in the fading light. Amara's heart pounded against her ribs as she walked towards him, Zara trailing just behind her, clutching a small, worn bag. Zara offered a nervous, hopeful smile and a little wave. Amara took a deep breath, looking back one last time at the innocent face of her sister. The man's voice was calm, devoid of emotion. Have you decided? He asked. Amara closed her eyes for a fleeting second. She whispered. A faint smile touched the man's lips. They drove away from the village, taking the winding road that led into the forest. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the air grew heavy and still. The birds fell silent. A sense of unease began to creep into Zara's heart. Sister, she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Why are we going this way? This isn't the road to the city. Amara said nothing, her gaze fixed on the road ahead. Suddenly, the car screeched to a halt. The doors flew open and two large, menacing men emerged from the shadows of the trees. Before Zara could even draw a breath to scream, they had her, their hands like iron clamps on her arms. Sister, Zara cried out, her voice a mix of terror and confusion. What's happening? Amara, help me. But Amara stood frozen, a statue carved from guilt and fear. The stranger stepped forward and placed a small, heavy bag into her hands. Gold coins and wads of cash gleamed inside. This is your payment, he said, his voice cold and final. Our deal is complete. Zara struggled desperately, her eyes locked on Amara, tears streaming down her face. Please, she begged, her voice breaking. Sister, please. I trust you. Amara couldn't bear to look. She turned away, her back to her sister's pleas. The sound of Zara's screams tore through the forest, a haunting melody of betrayal, as she was dragged away into the darkness. And then, silence. A silence so profound it was louder than any scream. Amara collapsed to her knees on the dusty road, the bag of money clutched in her trembling hands. Tears burned with a pain so intense she could hardly breathe. For a split second, a desperate urge to run after them, to save her sister, seized her, but then her eyes fell upon the bag. She saw the gold, the cash, the promise of a new life. And greed won. That night, Amara entered the city for the first time. The bright lights were blinding, a chaotic symphony of color. Buildings scraped the sky like man-made mountains. She was given a fine silk dress and shown to a room with a bed so soft it felt like sleeping on a cloud. Everything she had ever dreamed of was now hers. Yet, when she closed her eyes, she didn't see luxury. She saw Zara's face, twisted in terror and betrayal. She woke up screaming, her heart pounding in the darkness. Days bled into weeks. Amara adorned herself in expensive clothes, sparkling jewelry, and exotic perfumes. Men and women alike praised her beauty, her charm. But beneath the glittering surface, her heart was a wasteland. Every laugh was hollow, followed by a sharp echo of pain. Every night, sleep was a battlefield. Her dreams filled with nightmares of her sister. She started hearing things, a voice, whispering her name from the shadows. The flicker of movement in the corner of her eye. The night, once a time for rest, became her greatest fear. One evening, returning late from a lavish party, she found an old woman waiting at her gate. The woman's eyes were ancient and held a deep sadness. You cannot run from blood, the old woman said, her voice calm and steady. "The seeds you plant, you will surely harvest." Amara trembled, a chill running down her spine that had nothing to do with the night air. Amara stumbled inside, slamming the door and leaning against it, her body shaking uncontrollably. She had her luxury, her wealth, her dream. But it had cost her peace of mind, her soul. Zara's eyes fluttered open to a harsh, unfamiliar sunlight. She was on a cold, hard floor, the air thick with the smell of dust and smoke. When she tried to sit up, she realized her hands and feet were tied. Fear, cold and sharp, gripped her heart. The last thing she remembered was her sister's face, Amara's calm smile just before the betrayal. "Why did you do this to me?" Zara whispered into the empty room. Her voice trembled, but only the shadows answered. The men who had taken her were cold and silent. They didn't speak, they just pushed her to work. Zara cooked, cleaned, carried heavy loads, and served masters she never saw. Days blurred into weeks. Her body grew weary, her back ached constantly, and her eyes were swollen from unshed tears. But through every moment of hardship, one thought burned bright in her mind. Amara must be made to pay. But first, I will survive. At night, Zara would cry silently, praying to the spirits of her parents for strength. "You gave me no choice, sister," she'd whisper into the darkness. "I will not lose my soul to anger. I will find my way." The stranger, the man who had orchestrated her capture, watched her closely. He was cunning and dangerous, and his smile sent chills down her spine. One day, he told her, "Those who resist will learn to obey. Those who obey may yet find reward." Zara noticed the people she served were often cruel and selfish. Some demanded she work for hours without food. Others mocked her ragged clothes. But Zara was a quick learner. She became patient and observant. She watched everything and memorized every detail. The winding paths of the city, the names of powerful men, their habits and their weaknesses. Even in chains, she was learning. Months passed. Zara started to understand a crucial truth. Her survival wouldn't depend on physical strength, but on wisdom, observation, and patience. One day, while serving at a grand hall, she overheard the stranger speaking to another man. "I need her loyalty," he said. "She is strong, and someday she may be useful." Zara's heart raced. Useful. That meant there was a chance. She realized she could play along, bide her time, and wait for the right moment to escape. She began to speak less, offer quiet smiles, and do her work without drawing attention. Each day she learned more about the city, its people, and its secrets. At night, she would close her eyes and remember her village, the quiet rivers, the smell of fresh rain, the laughter of children. She would remember Amara and the betrayal that had cut her deeper than any knife. And yet, she told herself, anger will not save me. Courage will. Patience will. I will live, and one day, destiny will turn. One evening, as she was fetching water for the household, a kind woman approached her. "You work too hard for them," the woman whispered. "There is a family outside the city that helps children in danger. They can save you if you escape." Zara's eyes widened. "Escape?" she whispered back. "Yes," the woman replied, "but it will take courage, trust, and cleverness. Are you ready?" Zara nodded slowly. For the first time in months, a real glimmer of hope stirred in her heart. The next few weeks were a quiet, careful dance. She memorized the city's layout, the movements of the guards, and the habits of her captors. She waited for the perfect night when the guards would be sleepy and the streets empty. And on that night, she ran. She ran like she had never run before, scrambling through dark alleys, clambering across rooftops, her feet slipping in mud and rain. Her lungs burned and her feet bled, but she did not stop. By dawn, she reached the home of the kind family. They welcomed her, fed her, and cleaned her wounds. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, Zara felt safe. Weeks turned into months. Under the family's care, Zara was educated, dressed in fine garments, and taught how to manage wealth, influence, and power. The innocent, naive girl from the village was transformed into a clever, strong, and respected young woman. Yet, even as she built her new life, one thought never left her mind. Amara must see the cost of betrayal. So, Zara trained herself quietly. Not just to survive, but to one day return and face the sister who had sold her for a handful of gold. Every night, she would whisper to the spirits, "Let justice come at the right time. Let my heart remain strong. Let karma find her." Zara was no longer just a victim. She was a seed of destiny, quietly waiting to bloom into a storm. Amara awoke to the soft glow of the city lights streaming through her expensive silk curtains. Her bedroom was lavish golden lamps, velvet carpets, ornate furniture. The life she had dreamed of was finally hers, yet her heart felt heavy. The first night in her luxurious home, she dreamed of a shadowy figure, a girl with tear-stained cheeks, screaming her name. She jolted awake, sweat dripping down her face. "Just a dream," she whispered, but the fear refused to leave. Days passed, and Amara threw herself into the luxury she had longed for. She wore diamonds, attended grand parties, and received gifts from powerful men. People praised her beauty, envied her possessions, and whispered about her grace. But the happiness was shallow. She admired herself in the mirror. She saw something strange, a flicker of sadness behind her eyes. Every time she laughed with friends, it felt hollow. At night, the nightmares returned. A girl's voice called out, echoing in the corridors of her mansion. "Amara, Amara, why?" The servants noticed her restlessness. Candles went out mysteriously. Locks clicked open on their own. Some whispered about curses and bad spirits. Amara laughed nervously at first. Superstition, she told herself, yet a deep unease gripped her heart. She could not shake the memory of that night in the forest, the moment Zara had been taken. The bag of coins she had received felt heavier now, like it carried the weight of guilt. One evening, while attending a lavish party, an old woman approached her. Her hair was white like snow, her eyes deep and knowing. "You cannot escape blood," the woman said softly. "What is taken by greed will return to claim you." Amara forced a smile. "Who are you?" she asked. The woman only shook her head and disappeared into the crowd. The words haunted Amara all night. She could hear whispers even in the silence. "The soul you sold is not dead. Karma is patient." Weeks turned into months, and Amara's wealth began to feel like a cage. Friends who had laughed with her slowly drifted away. Some had only been around for her money. Parties felt cold and meaningless. Every reflection in the mirror reminded her of what she had done, the betrayal of her sister. Even her beauty seemed to fade. Her once glowing skin looked dull. Her smile no longer reached her eyes. People whispered, "The girl who has everything is losing something invisible. Her peace, her luck, her soul." Then came the first real sign of karma. One morning, Amara woke to find her gold coins missing. Every bag, every jewelry box, emptied. The guards had seen nothing. The doors had been locked. No one had entered or left. She panicked. Luxury felt fragile, as if a single thread could unravel it all. That night, she heard footsteps in her hallway. Slow, careful steps, and then a whisper, "Amara, Amara." Her heart raced. She looked around, but no one was there. Amara tried to ignore the signs. She continued to attend parties, wear silk dresses, and entertain visitors. But fear had taken root. She could not sleep, could not eat, and could not laugh. Each day brought small misfortunes. A car accident she barely survived, a loyal servant betraying her trust, friends turning against her. Every event reminded her, wealth cannot buy peace. Her dreams of luxury had cost her more than she could ever imagine: her sister, her conscience, and now her safety. The nightmares grew stronger. Zara's face appeared vividly, her eyes full of sorrow. Amara would wake screaming, clutching her silk sheets, shaking in terror. She tried to run, but she realized karma was not just a warning. It had already begun. For the first time in her life, Amara understood fear in its purest form. Not fear of poverty, not fear of death, but fear of destiny itself. And somewhere, far away, Zara's strength was growing. The girl she had betrayed was learning, surviving, and preparing for the day their paths would cross. Amara could feel it. though she did not yet know how. Her golden life was unraveling, and karma, patient, silent, and unstoppable, was coming. Years had passed since that fateful night in the forest. Zara, once a helpless girl, had transformed completely. She had escaped the clutches of the rich stranger with the help of a kind family outside the city. They took her in, fed her, clothed her, and gave her an education that Amara could never imagine. Zara learned quickly. She was clever, patient, and determined. Every insult, every cruelty she had suffered became a lesson. Every sleepless night sharpened her mind. Every tear strengthened her resolve. By the time she was grown, Zara was more than just beautiful. She was confident, intelligent, and powerful. She owned businesses, controlled wealth, and commanded respect from everyone she met. Yet she never forgot Amara. In her heart, she carried both the pain of betrayal and the strength to rise above it. She had no desire for revenge and anger, only justice and destiny. The news of Zara's return to the city spread quickly. People spoke in whispers. The girl who was lost. She has returned, richer and stronger than anyone could imagine. Meanwhile, Amara was at a lavish party, surrounded by wealthy men and women. Trying to distract herself from the constant dread that had begun to plague her. She laughed, but it was forced. She smiled, but her eyes were hollow. Deep inside, she knew that someone or something was coming for her. And then, she saw her. Zara walked into the grand hall, draped in golden silk, carrying herself with a quiet authority that turned every head. Her presence was commanding, yet calm. Every eye in the room fell upon her. And then, Amara's eyes met hers. Time seemed to stop. Amara's breath caught in her throat. The wealth she had clutched so greedily now felt meaningless. The gold and silk, the diamonds and parties, they could not protect her from the horror in Zara's gaze. Zara approached slowly, her footsteps echoing through the hall. Amara tried to speak, but her voice failed. The rich guests around them whispered, sensing the tension. Some even stepped back, afraid of the storm about to unfold. Zara stopped in front of Amara. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, Zara spoke, her voice calm but powerful. I have seen what greed does. Sister, I have endured what cruelty brings. I have survived, and I have grown. Amara's knees weakened. She stumbled backward, clutching her dress. I didn't know, she stammered. I never meant. Zara shook her head gently. Your gold bought you luxury, but it could never buy peace. Too. My life for your dreams. And now, destiny has brought us together. Tears welled up in Amara's eyes. She dropped to her knees. I am sorry. Please forgive me. Zara looked at her with a steady gaze. Her heart ached, but she had learned patience, strength, and dignity. I forgive you, she said softly, but forgiveness does not mean everything returns to how it was. Your life will never be as it was. Your greed has its own price. At that moment, strange things began to happen in the hall. The lights flickered. Golden ornaments fell from tables. The crowd gasped. Amara felt panic rise inside her. Her wealth, her comfort, her power all began to slip away as if invisible hands were tearing them down. For the first time, she understood fear in its purest form. Karma was here, and it was unstoppable. Zara turned and left the hall, walking with dignity. Amara fell to the floor, clutching what remained of her pride. She had been warned, and now she had learned the lesson too late. The guests whispered about what had happened, but Zara paid them no mind. Her mind was clear, her heart at peace. She had survived, grown, and reclaimed her life. She had endured betrayal, hardship, and pain. And she had emerged stronger than anyone, including her sister, could ever imagine. The city pulsed with a vibrant energy, its streets alive with lights and music, a celebration of life itself. But within the opulent walls of her sprawling mansion, Amara felt a profound and chilling emptiness. The gold she had once cherished with a feverish passion now felt like heavy chains, binding her to a life of hollow extravagance. Her legendary parties, once the talk of the town, now seemed like soulless charades. 3. Every polished mirror reflected the guilt etched on her face, a truth she could no longer hide, even from herself. She was trapped, suffocating under the weight of her choices, completely unaware that destiny was already standing at her doorstep, ready to collect its due. One crisp morning, Zara returned to the city. She didn't sneak back. She arrived with an air of officiality, walking with a confident, purposeful stride. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced Amara's heart. It was a primal terror that stole her appetite and robbed her of sleep. Even her servants, who once moved with practiced reverence, now whispered in hushed, fearful tones whenever Zara's name was mentioned. The luxury that had once been Amara's shield and comfort had never felt so utterly empty, so fragile and meaningless. The stage was set, and the final act was about to begin. Zara approached slowly, her steps measured and quiet. Her eyes were calm, yet they held a fierce, unyielding fire. Holiday, overwhelmed by the sheer force of Zara's presence and the crushing weight of her own conscience, Amara's strength gave out. She dropped to her knees, her carefully constructed facade crumbling as tears streamed down her face. "Please," she begged, her voice choked with desperation and regret. "I'm so sorry. I never meant I just wanted. I thought it was the only way I could survive." Zara raised a hand, not in anger, but to command silence. Her voice was steady, devoid of malice but filled with a profound truth. "Survival at the cost of another's life is not survival. Amara," she said, each word landing like a carefully placed stone. "The pain you inflicted upon me has carved lessons into your life, whether you choose to see them or not." The assembled guests, a crowd of the city's most powerful, watched in stunned silence as the once mighty older sister wept pitifully before the younger. Zara felt no anger, no thirst for vengeance. What she felt was the quiet, immense power of justice finally being served. And then, the signs began. A strange, impossible phenomenon unfolded before their eyes. The massive chandeliers, each weighing hundreds of pounds, started to swing violently, though not a breath of wind stirred the air. Zara's eyes softened with a flicker of pity, but her resolve remained unshaken. "Amara, this is the cost of betrayal," she stated, her voice echoing in the now darkening room. "Luxury gained through another's suffering will never last. Power taken by greed is merely an illusion, and you have learned this lesson in the hardest way possible." Utterly defeated, Amara collapsed fully onto the cold floor. Her luxurious life, the very foundation of her identity, had vanished in a matter of moments. Her friends, the fair-weather companions who had basked in her wealth, abandoned her without a second glance. The parties, the silk gowns, the glittering diamonds all were rendered meaningless, empty symbols of a hollow existence. For the first time in her life, Amara truly understood the immense weight of her actions. And for the first time, she felt real fear, not the fear of poverty or losing status, but the deep, bone-chilling fear of destiny itself. With her purpose fulfilled, Zara turned and walked away, her head held high, leaving the ruins of Amara's world behind her. Outside, the sun was shining brightly, and the city was alive with the promise of hope and opportunity. Zara had not only survived, she had flourished. She had rebuilt her life, created her own wealth, and reclaimed her honor with unshakable dignity. As she departed, the crowd whispered amongst themselves in awe. Look at her. The girl they once dismissed and cast aside, now a queen in her own right. Zara didn't stop to relish her victory. She journeyed back to the village where she had grown up, the place where her story began. With a heart full of compassion, she ensured her family and old neighbors were cared for, lifting them from their struggles. She used her newfound wealth, not for personal indulgence, but to build schools for the children, to feed the hungry, and to create systems that protected the innocent. Her heart, though scarred by past betrayals, was stronger than ever. She had masterfully transformed her suffering into power, her pain into wisdom, and her tragedy into a force for good. Years later, a weary, unrecognizable figure returned to that same village. It was Amara, poor, empty-handed, and utterly alone. She walked the familiar paths of her youth. She carried no gold, no jewels, only the heavy burden of her story. She told it to anyone who would listen, not as a plea for pity, but as a stark warning. Greed and betrayal, she would say, may grant you gold for a moment, a fleeting taste of power, but they can never escape the unyielding, inevitable balance of life. Thank you so much for watching. If this story resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe for more content. We'll see you in the next video.